Hi, welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host, and I started Faith to Influence, my Christian coaching business, in December of 2018, just hoping to make it. I was nervous, I was scared, I had self-doubt, and God delivered through me as I surrendered to Him. I collected over $250,000 in revenue that first year and have been able to grow since then. I also, though, realized that I knew how to do a few things that many Christian coaches struggle with early on. I knew how to design my business and my offers, and I knew how to price them. I had strong mindset around sales and money, and I didn't have any resistance lingering there. I also knew how to sell with high integrity and high converting sales strategies. That's what I help people do now. Christian coaches who want to bring their businesses to life, Christian entrepreneurs who want to make more income and make more impact, come to this podcast and do work with us for those reasons. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about something really interesting. It's a word that's even hard to say out loud, presuppositions. I want to talk to you specifically about sales presuppositions. A presupposition is something that you're assuming. It's an assumption that you've made going into a situation. And in sales, people make all kinds of bad presuppositions. The one I want to talk to you about specifically now is an example from one of the clients that paid for us to do direct consulting for their business. I recently had an amazing company with amazing sales leaders and amazing leaders in general hire us and pay $15,000 for me to come in and help them recraft their sales process. Occasionally, you may or may not know this if you listen to our podcast, but we get hired for bigger consulting deals. We also get hired for partnership sales directly for 7- and 8-figure businesses. And this was one of those businesses that's already over $1 million in sales annually. They're doing really good business. And what I realized as I was learning about how they do sales is that they were leaving a lot of meat on the bone. They were leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And their closing percentage was significantly lower than I knew it should be. And I got to watch some of their pre-recorded sales calls. And what I recognized is they had assumptions going into those sales calls that were just off. Now, their client was churches. They were working specifically with churches. And what they were doing on these sales calls is they were assuming an objection before they ever got to it. They would hold a great sales call and they'd get to the end and they'd say something like, so this is how we work with our clients and this is how much it costs. And I'm sure you have to talk with other people at your company and, take some time to think about this. So I'll just send you an email with the information and then you can get back to me and let me know what's next. Oh boy. They were losing a lot of sales because they weren't inviting people to buy. They were assuming an objection before they even asked for the order. I want you to pause for a moment and imagine whether or not you might be doing some of this. Assuming an objection before it's been stated. Assuming a concern before it becomes real. In this case, what I advise them to do is get to the end and say, is this something that you'd like to do? And ask the person if they want to buy. And then it's okay to receive that objection. I'm sure the assumption came because they received an objection like that regularly. But we need to give people an opportunity to buy. Our job as salespeople, as entrepreneurs, as coaches, is to make it as easy as possible for the right people to say yes. So let's invite them to buy, and then let's find out if there's an objection. Maybe the objection they think is going to come isn't going to come at all. The truth is, 100% true is that it's not going to happen every time. Some of those prospects are going to be ready to say yes on the spot. And if we assume the objection and send the email, we're not going to give those people a chance to say yes. And some people are going to have an objection that's completely different than the one that we're assuming. And we're never going to answer those questions or respond to that objection if we assume the wrong one and send an email hoping that that's going to solve the problem. And the reality is an email is never going to be as good of a closer as you are. An email is not going to be able to answer questions and ask curious follow-up questions in the same way that you are. You, the coach, need to walk people through the decision-making process and hold their hand on the way through. And that's helpful if we don't make assumptions first. Let's let go of assumptions and move forward in curiosity instead. And our job, what I think is really important, is for us to pace and lead through the decision-making process. So even if it was a situation where someone needed to talk to another decision maker, they needed to bring it to their board, they needed to get other people involved, they needed time to think and pray, great, that's fine. And we need to book that next call. We need to not leave an open-ended loop with an email that we're hoping is going to cause our prospects to assertively follow up with us. Most people are too passive for that. They need you, the coach, the leader, to guide them through the decision-making process. So even if they did have that objection that the company I was working with was concerned would come up, and they said, I need to talk to other people at the company or other people at the church to make the decision, I'd say, great. How long do you think you need to have to make that decision collectively as a company? Do you need a few days? Do you need a week? Okay, great. Well, why don't we set a call for next Thursday or Friday where we can grab 30 minutes. I can answer any final questions you have, and we can make the decision together. Between now and then, I can email you resources so you can share with everybody at the church and come up with the best decision together. I'm also happy for you to text me with any questions that come up. But if I don't hear from you, we'll talk next Thursday at 2 o'clock. Having that next call on the calendar where the decision is going to be made is incredibly important and incredibly helpful in guiding people to a decision. This is one example of a presupposition that hurts our chances at making sales. Other examples of assumptions that we might make that can get in the way is the assumption that people aren't going to be able to afford it, or the people I know can't buy. I talked to somebody earlier today, a really big-hearted woman who wants to help other women who are dealing with substance abuse in their marriage, specifically dealing with a husband who's struggling with alcoholism. This is an important mission that she has. But the presupposition that she has is this idea that everyone that she talks to is not going to be able to afford her program. She's making an assumption that women who are married to alcoholics don't have money to invest in coaching. And it's just not true. Could it be true that there's a pattern of a lot of women who are in that situation, struggling financially? It's possible. Most of the assumptions that we make are based on partial truths. But we end up making an overarching assumption that's totally untrue. An example of this is her own situation. She has struggled with that same kind of challenge in her marriage, and they have plenty of money to invest. And she happens to know other people who have plenty of money to invest. So once we start to ask a few questions, we recognize that the assumption that her ideal client has no money to invest is absolutely untrue. So here's my invitation to you. Start asking yourself the question and trying to gain new awarenesses of what assumptions are you making that are unhealthy or unproductive or hurting your sales process. They may be assumptions about yourself. They might be assumptions about your price. They may be assumptions about your prospects. Maybe it's about your offer. Maybe it's about what people are going to say when they receive your offer. Maybe it's about what you think people think about you, which is a losing game to play. The game of trying to think about what we think people might think about us. It's overwhelming. We need to let go of some of these things. And the invitation for you is to replace them with better presuppositions in sales. A better assumption to make would be that if somebody is getting on a call with you and they're openly talking to you about the challenges they're facing in your area of expertise, the presupposition you might decide to adopt is that they probably want to buy. My belief is that just about everyone I get on a call with wants to buy my service. That's a great presupposition. It doesn't mean that they will. Some people won't. But my assumption is that the people I talk to are going to want to buy. And that helps me make more sales. It helps me operate in a certain way that makes it easy for the right people to say yes. My other assumption is that if someone I get on a call with is my ideal client, that not only will they want to buy, but that I'm highly likely to be able to be the right coach for them to help them solve that problem. That's my assumption. If they're an ideal fit client, my assumption is that they're going to want to buy and that I'm the best coach for them. And because I believe these things, I operate in such a way that makes it easy for those right clients to say yes and to buy. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate having your support. Be sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to share the podcast with a friend. Additionally, in the description of the video, you're going to find 2 clickable links. One is to our free 10-step sales process. I would love for you to use that in your business. It's our gift to you. Go ahead and grab it. Additionally, there is a link to our 100K Business Design Challenge. This is only $7, and it's 4 days of training. It's teaching you how to identify your target audience, set your mission statement, figure out your signature offers and pricing for your business, and learn how to open a sales call. I would love for you to take that action with us. If you feel like you're ready for more support from me and my team, and you're curious about what that looks like, send me a direct email, justin@faith2influence.com. I'd also love to hear your questions and thoughts about the podcast. Enjoy the rest of this episode. My other assumption is that if someone says that they can't afford it, that that is probably an expression of fear or concern that's dealing with other stories. Now, this doesn't mean that they can afford it. This doesn't mean that I'm going to press on them. But I have this kind of assumption that most objections, I can't afford it. I need to talk to my spouse. I don't have the time. I'm not sure that I'm ready for this. Most objections, my assumption is, actually come from a place of fear about whether or not my prospect is good enough, whether or not they can actually do the work, whether or not they can actually get the result. And so knowing that there's like this tender place that my prospects are oftentimes coming from when they present an objection, and that it's usually fear-based and it's about their own self-doubt, allows me to receive whatever objection they present with total empathy and love and curiosity to ask enough questions to find the root of the objection, which in many cases is fear and self-doubt. That doesn't mean that they're going to buy. It doesn't mean I'm going to try to back them in a corner to buy. It doesn't mean I'm not going to receive the reality that some people can't afford my offer. Some people cannot, and that's absolutely okay. Go listen to my podcast for free. Or let me pray for you, or let me introduce you to somebody who I think can help, or I've got a book recommendation I think would be awesome for you. I'd love to send you a free book. There's so many paths I can take when I'm with somebody who really can't afford my service, but who I want to help and who wants my help. The reality, though, is many people say they can't afford it when they can, and it's actually a cover-up to a different objection. And so my assumption is that there's usually something deeper below the surface. This allows my curiosity to play and for me to find the truth when I'm with a prospect. If your assumption is the first thing a prospect says is absolute truth, and there's no way to change somebody's mind if they've got an objection, or if your assumption is an objection is a rejection, you're probably not going to handle objections with the same level of curiosity I will. So you can imagine how these presuppositions affect your results in sales. If you've been thinking objection is rejection, or even if you've been thinking in sales that when somebody says no to your offer, that they're saying no to you and rejecting you, you're going to find yourself avoiding sales and taking things too personally. My assumption is that if somebody doesn't buy what I'm offering, it's because it's not the right thing for them at this time, and or they're not the right prospect for me at this time. That it's just God's will, and I don't take it personally at all. I know that they need my responsibility is to invite, and their responsibility is to make the best decision for themselves. And if I'm curious and I ask great questions and it doesn't quite fit, I know that it's just not the right person or the right time right now. And I'm absolutely okay with that. And so I know I'm talking about a lot of different scenarios here, and I'm bringing around a lot of different ideas. You might be feeling all kinds of different things as you consider these, because in some cases you're like, yeah, that's me. I think an objection is a rejection. I think an objection is a question, by the way. I think an objection is an opportunity for me to build greater trust and a deeper relationship and solve problems and provide great coaching to help people find the answers that they need in many cases. The answer today for you, if you're listening to this podcast episode, is simply as a first step to try to gain an awareness of the assumptions you're making and to then start to categorize them. Is this a helpful assumption or is this an unhelpful assumption? If it's unhelpful, let's change it. Let's let go of it. You do not have to think what you've always thought. You do not have to assume in the way that you've always assumed. You do not have to believe what you've always believed. You can transform and change even in a moment. God can do anything. And so if something's an unhealthy assumption, you might consider even in this moment saying no more and letting it go and replacing it with a healthy story and assumption that can help you help more people. I hope this has been helpful for you today. And I'm excited to hear about how you transform these presuppositions into healthy assumptions that support you and your clients. God bless you. Have an amazing week. I'll talk to you more soon.